You wake up and the tiredness is already there, settled into your bones like it never left. You slept enough. 8 hours, maybe more. Your body is rested. But something in you is so profoundly depleted that the thought of facing another day feels insurmountable. You go through the motions, you show up, you perform your role. But underneath it all, there is this bone-deep weariness that has nothing to do with how many hours you slept or how much coffee you drink. You have tried rest. You have tried vacation. You have tried stepping back, saying no, protecting your energy. And none of it touches this exhaustion, because this exhaustion does not live in your muscles or your schedule. It lives somewhere deeper, in a place that has no name in our usual vocabulary of wellness and self-care. This is not burnout. This is not depression, though it can look like both. This is something else entirely. This is what happens when your moral architecture is carrying more weight than it was designed to hold. This is the exhaustion of living in a world that asks you to compromise what you know to be true, that asks you to participate in systems you find fundamentally unjust, that asks you to smile and nod and get along when everything in you is screaming that something is profoundly wrong. And today, we are going to name this exhaustion for what it is. We are going to understand why rest does not cure it. And we are going to explore what it means to carry this weight while still remaining human. Hannah Arendt understood something that most spiritual teachers miss entirely. She understood that thinking, that the act of consciousness itself comes with a cost. Not the pleasant cost of intellectual challenge or the satisfying difficulty of solving a puzzle, but the existential cost of being awake in a world that is, in many ways, asleep. She wrote about the life of the mind, the vita contemplativa, as something fundamentally at odds with the life of action, the vita activa. And while she valued both, she was unflinching in her recognition that to think deeply, to maintain moral clarity, to refuse the comfort of thoughtlessness, this is exhausting in ways that our culture does not acknowledge or honor. We live in a world that celebrates productivity, that measures human worth in terms of output and efficiency, that pathologizes rest and pathologizes exhaustion as personal failure. But what Arendt understood, and what you are experiencing, is that some exhaustion is not personal failure. Some exhaustion is the natural consequence of maintaining your humanity in a world that is organized around principles that violate that humanity. Let me be very clear about what moral exhaustion is not. It is not the tiredness that comes from working too hard, though you may also be working too hard. It is not the depletion that comes from caring for others, though you may also be depleted by caregiving. It is not simply being overwhelmed by the news cycle, though the news may be part of what exhausts you. Moral exhaustion is what happens when there is a fundamental misalignment between what you know to be true and right, and what you are required to do or witness or participate in to survive in the world as it is. It is the exhaustion of pretending that things are okay when they are not okay. It is the exhaustion of smiling at people whose values you find abhorrent. It is the exhaustion of participating in systems you know are unjust because opting out entirely is not a realistic option. It is the exhaustion of watching suffering that could be prevented, but is not prevented because prevention would require changes that those in power refuse to make. It is the exhaustion of being gaslit about reality itself, of being told that what you see is not what you see, that what you know is not what you know. Arendt wrote extensively about the banality of evil, about how the most profound moral catastrophes are not carried out by monsters, but by ordinary people who have stopped thinking, who have abdicated their responsibility to judge, who have allowed themselves to become cogs in machines whose larger purposes they do not examine. And while her work focused on the specific horror of totalitarianism, the principle applies more broadly. We live in a world full of systems that operate according to their own logic, that prioritize efficiency or profit or control over human flourishing, and we are all, to varying degrees, participants in these systems. You go to work, you pay your taxes, you buy products made by exploited labor because finding alternatives is prohibitively difficult or expensive. You remain silent when speaking up would cost you your job or your relationships. You perform normalcy when normalcy feels like a lie. And each of these small compromises, each of these moments when you know better but do otherwise, each of these instances of choosing survival over integrity, they accumulate, They create a kind of moral debt that your psyche carries. And this debt, this is what exhausts you. The problem is not that you are weak. The problem is not that you are too sensitive, or that you need to develop thicker skin, or that you should just focus on what you can control. The problem is that you have maintained your capacity to think, to judge, to recognize injustice and suffering. And this capacity comes into conflict with the demands of daily life in ways that create genuine psychological and even physical distress. Arendt distinguished between thinking and knowing. Knowing is the accumulation of facts, the mastery of information. But thinking is something else entirely. Thinking is the active engagement with questions that have no final answers, the willingness to examine and re-examine your beliefs and assumptions, the refusal to accept easy certainties. And thinking, in this sense, is deeply disruptive. It makes you unable to simply go along, to accept what everyone else accepts, to find comfort in consensus. When you think, truly think, you become aware of contradictions, of hypocrisies, of the gap between what we claim to value and what we actually do. And once you see these things, you cannot unsee them. You can suppress the seeing, you can distract yourself from it. But the seeing is always there, creating tension, creating exhaustion. If this resonates with something you have been carrying, something you have not had words for, consider subscribing. I explore these territories every week, and I would be honored to have you along for the journey of understanding what it means to remain conscious in a world that often rewards unconsciousness. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes with moral exhaustion. It is the loneliness of seeing what others do not see, or what others have chosen not to see. You look around and everyone else seems fine. They are laughing at jokes that feel cruel to you. They are excited about achievements that feel hollow to you. They are participating enthusiastically in systems that you experience as oppressive, and you start to wonder if maybe you are the problem. Maybe you are overthinking. Maybe you are too negative, too critical, too unable to just enjoy things. This doubt, this self-questioning, it compounds the exhaustion, because now you are not only carrying the weight of your moral clarity, you are also carrying the weight of wondering whether your moral clarity is actually a defect, a form of maladjustment, a failure to properly integrate into society. But here is what you need to understand. Your exhaustion is not a sign that you are broken. Your exhaustion is a sign that your moral sense is still intact. It is a sign that you have not yet numbed yourself to the point where injustice feels normal, where cruelty feels acceptable, where compromise with your deepest values feels easy. I know many of you watching this have never told anyone what you are really experiencing. You have been carrying this alone, maybe for years, thinking something is fundamentally wrong with you. You have tried to fix it with better boundaries, with meditation, with therapy, with exercise, with all the tools our culture offers for managing distress. And nothing has worked because the problem is not in you. The problem is in the fundamental structure of a world that demands you betray your values in order to participate. So let me ask you directly, when did you first realize that the exhaustion you felt was not the kind that rest could cure? When did you first understand that something deeper was depleting you? I want you to share in the comments, not because I need engagement, but because someone else watching this needs to see your words. They need to know they are not the only one carrying this weight. And if you cannot find the words right now, if it feels too enormous to articulate, just type this: I am morally exhausted. That is it. Just those 4 words. Because when you do, you create permission for dozens of others to name what they are feeling too. Your honesty, your willingness to acknowledge this burden, it helps break the isolation that makes moral exhaustion so unbearable. So comment below. Tell me when you first noticed this. I read every single one, and I promise you, you are not alone in what you are experiencing. Let me tell you what happens when moral exhaustion is not acknowledged. When it is treated as a personal problem rather than a response to genuine moral injury. You start to shut down. Not all at once, but gradually. You begin to numb yourself, to cultivate strategic ignorance, to avoid thinking too deeply about things that upset you. You develop what psychologists call moral disengagement, a set of cognitive strategies that allow you to participate in or witness things that violate your values without feeling the full weight of that violation. You tell yourself, that you are just one person, that your choices do not matter, that everyone else is doing the same thing, that you have to pick your battles, that you cannot save the world. And all of these things may be true, but they are also mechanisms of protection, ways of managing the unbearable tension between what you know and what you do. And here is the terrible irony. The strategies you develop to cope with moral exhaustion, the numbing and the disengagement and the cynicism, these strategies do reduce your exhaustion. They make life more bearable, but they do so by eroding the very thing that was causing the exhaustion in the first place, which is your moral sensitivity, your capacity to care, your unwillingness to accept injustice as normal. Arendt would call this the abdication of judgment. And she was very clear that this abdication, this decision to stop thinking about the moral dimensions of your actions and choices, this is how ordinary people participate in extraordinary evil. Now, I am not saying that your personal exhaustion is the same as participating in genocide. The scale is obviously different, but the mechanism is the same. When thinking becomes too painful, when consciousness becomes too exhausting, we stop thinking. We stop being conscious. And in that stopping, we lose something essential about what makes us human. The question then becomes, how do you carry moral clarity without being destroyed by it? How do you maintain your capacity to think, to judge, to care, without succumbing to despair or exhaustion or cynicism? This is not a question with an easy answer. In fact, it is a question that each person must answer for themselves in the specific circumstances of their own life. But I can tell you what does not work. What does not work is trying to make your exhaustion go away through individual solutions. What does not work is treating this as a personal wellness issue that can be resolved through better self-care or more resilient thinking or reframing your perspective. The exhaustion you feel is not irrational. It is not a cognitive distortion. It is a reasonable response to an unreasonable situation. You are exhausted because you are being asked to function in a world that is, in many ways, organized around principles that harm human beings. You are exhausted because maintaining moral clarity requires constant vigilance, constant thinking, constant judgment, in a world that would prefer you stop thinking and just comply. This exhaustion is not something to be cured. It is something to be honored. It is evidence that you have not yet sacrificed your humanity on the altar of convenience or comfort or social acceptance. But honoring your exhaustion does not mean being destroyed by it. It does not mean martyring yourself to moral purity or withdrawing from the world entirely or succumbing to despair. It means finding ways to live that acknowledge both the reality of the world as it is and your own need to survive in that world without losing yourself entirely. Arendt wrote about the space of appearance, the public realm where human beings come together and reveal themselves to one another through speech and action. And she argued that this space, this commons, is essential to human flourishing. It is where we become fully human, where we exercise our capacity for freedom, where we create something larger than our individual selves. But she also recognized that maintaining this space requires effort, requires vigilance, requires people who are willing to think and judge and act, even when doing so is costly. Your moral exhaustion is, in a sense, the price of maintaining that space. It is what it costs to refuse complicity, to maintain standards, to care about things that others have decided are not worth caring about. And this cost is real. It is not melodramatic to acknowledge that consciousness hurts, that awareness has a price, that refusing to look away from suffering or injustice takes something from you. But here is what I want you to consider. The exhaustion you feel is not the end point. It is a signal. It is your psyche telling you that something is misaligned, that you are being asked to live in a way that violates your deepest sense of what it means to be human. And while you may not be able to change the entire world, you can change how you position yourself within it. You can find or create spaces where your values are shared, where you do not have to constantly translate or justify or defend what you know to be true. You can be more selective about where you direct your energy, recognizing that you cannot fight every battle or right every wrong or bear witness to every injustice. You can practice what Arendt would call thoughtfulness, which is different from either unthinking action or paralyzed contemplation. Thoughtfulness is the capacity to pause, to reflect, to consider the meaning and implications of what you are doing, without becoming so lost in thought that you cannot act at all. This might look like working for organizations whose values align with yours, even if that means less money or status. It might look like being honest about your limits, saying no to requests that would require you to compromise your integrity. It might look like finding communities of people who share your moral vision, who understand the exhaustion you carry because they carry it too. It might look like engaging in small acts of resistance or creation that affirm your values even when the larger systems remain unchanged. It might look like protecting your capacity to think by limiting your exposure to information or situations that overload your moral sense without offering any possibility of meaningful response. None of these strategies will eliminate your exhaustion entirely, but they can make it more bearable. They can create pockets of alignment in a world of misalignment, moments of integrity in a life that requires compromise. There is a concept in moral philosophy called moral injury, originally developed to describe what happens to soldiers who participate in or witness acts that violate their moral code. But the concept applies more broadly. Moral injury occurs when you are forced to betray what you believe is right, when you are powerless to prevent suffering or injustice that you witness, when you are complicit in systems that harm others. And the research on moral injury is clear. It is not resolved through individual therapy or self-care. It is resolved through acknowledgement, through community, through taking action that realigns your life with your values, through finding meaning in the struggle itself, rather than in achieving some final victory or resolution. Your moral exhaustion is a form of moral injury. You have been living in a world that injures your moral sense daily, that asks you to participate in, or witness or accept things that violate your deepest convictions. And this injury accumulates. It creates a kind of spiritual wound that shows up as exhaustion, as numbness, as despair, as a loss of meaning or purpose or hope. But wounds, even moral wounds, can heal, not by pretending the injury did not happen, not by minimizing its significance, but by acknowledging it fully and then finding ways to live that honor, both the reality of the injury and your own capacity for resilience and recovery. Arendt believed deeply in the human capacity for natality, for new beginnings, for starting over even in the face of catastrophe. She believed that no matter how dark things become, human beings retain the capacity to act, to create something new, to interrupt the seemingly inevitable flow of events with something unexpected. Your exhaustion may feel totalizing right now. It may feel like this is just how life is, like this heaviness is permanent, like you will carry this weight forever. But exhaustion is not a permanent state. It is a temporary condition that arises under specific circumstances. And while you may not be able to change all the circumstances that contribute to your exhaustion, you can change some of them. You can make choices that reduce the gap between who you are and how you live. You can find others who see what you see, who share the burden of consciousness. You can take action, however small, that expresses your values and creates tiny pockets of justice or beauty or truth in a world that often lacks these things. What I am offering you is not hope in the cheap sense of optimism or positive thinking. I am offering you the recognition that your exhaustion is meaningful, that it arises from your refusal to abandon your humanity, and that this refusal, costly as it is also powerful. Every person who maintains their capacity to think, to judge, to care, even in the face of systems that punish such thinking, they are performing an act of resistance. They are keeping alive the possibility of a different way of being, a different way of organizing our collective life. Your exhaustion is not evidence that you are failing. Your exhaustion is evidence that you are still fighting, still refusing to accept the unacceptable, still holding on to something precious in a world that would prefer you let it go. If what I am sharing here resonates with something you have been feeling, something you have not quite been able to name, then I want you to know you are not alone in this. There are many of us exploring these questions, sitting with these uncomfortable truths, learning to see in new ways. I create these videos for people who are ready to go deeper, who are not satisfied with surface answers, who want to understand rather than just feel better temporarily. If that is you, consider subscribing. Not because you need another channel to follow, but because this journey of understanding yourself, of waking up to what is real, It helps to have companions along the way. People who will not offer you easy fixes, but will sit with you in the questions. I will be here every week with another exploration, another perspective, another thread to pull on, and I would be honored to have you here as part of this community of thinkers and seekers. So if this feels right, hit that subscribe button. And if you found value in this particular exploration, let me know in the comments what resonated most with you. Your reflections often illuminate things I had not considered, and they help others who are walking this same difficult path. The philosopher Simone Weil wrote that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity, and this is what your moral exhaustion really represents. It represents your unwillingness to withdraw your attention from suffering, from injustice, from all the ways in which the world fails to live up to its own stated values. Most people, when confronted with these realities, when faced with the choice between seeing clearly and protecting their comfort, they choose comfort. They look away, they rationalize, they numb, and there is no judgment in saying this. Looking away is a survival strategy, and survival is not nothing, but you have not looked away. You have kept your attention engaged, your moral sense active, your capacity for judgment intact, and this is generous in the deepest sense. It is a gift you are giving to the world, even when the world does not recognize or value that gift. But generosity has limits. Even attention, pure and rare as it is, cannot be sustained indefinitely without rest, without nourishment, without community and support. So here is what I want to leave you with. Your exhaustion is telling you something important. It is telling you that you cannot carry this alone. It is telling you that individual solutions to collective problems will always be inadequate. It is telling you that you need to find others, to build or join communities of shared moral vision, to create spaces where your values are not constantly under assault. It is telling you that you need to be more strategic about where you direct your attention and energy, recognizing that you have limits, and that honoring those limits is not the same as giving up. It is telling you that you need to find ways to act that align with your values. Even if those actions are small, even if they do not change the whole system, because action that expresses integrity is sustaining in ways that mere compliance can never be. And it is telling you that rest, real rest, comes not from disconnecting from what matters, but from connecting more deeply with it, from finding or creating circumstances where you can live more congruently with what you know to be true. Your moral exhaustion is not a problem to be solved. It is a truth to be honored. It is the price of remaining human in a world that often rewards inhumanity. It is the cost of thinking in a world that prefers thoughtlessness. It is the burden of consciousness in a culture of unconsciousness. And while this burden is real and heavy, it is also proof that you have not yet surrendered what is most essential in you. So carry it consciously. Carry it with others who understand. Carry it strategically, knowing when to engage and when to preserve your energy. Carry it with the knowledge that your exhaustion itself is a form of testimony, a refusal to accept as normal what should never be normal. And know that in carrying it, you are participating in something larger than yourself, something Arendt understood deeply. You are maintaining the human capacity for judgment, for moral clarity, for caring about the world and wanting it to be better than it is. This capacity may exhaust you, but it is also what makes you fully human. And that is not nothing. That is everything.